I am Bryce Newberger, and this is the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix. Act 1, From the Stars, Fall. Chapter 1. The sun was waning into the evening over a small hamlet. Villagers mulled about conducting business at the various traders, bartering and haggling for assorted items, each one vying for the best deal. Cal continued to watch a specific member of the crowd, oblivious to the rest of the common rabble. He squirmed on the thatched roof of the tanner. His precarious footing was the price for his perfect vantage point. His target was rather large and bulbous. Cal sneered at his quarry. It didn't matter how gigantic his enemy would seem. He was the greatest swordsman who ever lived. At least, in his mind. Though it should be mentioned he was only 8 years old. Amora, his 9-year-old sister, scolded him as she did her best to scramble to the roof as well. "Calvin! What on earth are you doing up here?" She did her best to mimic her mother's authoritative tone, then fussed at her hair trying to pull straw from her brown locks. Cal shushed her as he kept his sky-blue eyes on his target and buried his face into the straw, hoping his blonde hair would be camouflaged. Did she not know that this was a life-or-death situation? Ox, an unfortunate nickname for the boy, was a rather fat child who bullied all the other children in town. He had taken a copper piece from Cal earlier that day, though Ox always gives when he takes, and this time he had given Cal a bruise on the back of his head when he clubbed him with one of his meaty fists. Cal had taken a different route home from his daily learnings that day, one which very stealthily followed the big bully. Amora clasped Cal by the shoulder. "Come on, you got straw in my dress, and didn't Ma tell you to leave that toy sword at home?" She burned her emerald eyes into the back of her brother's head. Cal ignored her as he surveyed the situation. Ox was flanked by 2 of his cronies, other children who figured if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Though in their case it was if you can't beat 'em, beat with 'em. They were just as nasty as he was. As Amora was still nagging at him, Cal jumped from the roof with his sword held high. He gave out a squeak of a battle cry. Ox turned just in time to catch the blow on the left side of his portly cheek. The big boy let out a squeal and fell to the ground, clutching the welt forming on his face. Amora slipped down after Cal and grabbed him as he was about to deliver his follow-up attack. "Run!" she yelled as the adults in the marketplace were about to get involved. Cal kicked as he was drugged by his older sister. "For death and glory!" he roared defiantly. Ox pointed after them. "Stop 'em!" he oinked in rage. The 2 other boys ran after them. Now, in the alley between the tanner and the grocer, Amora could see the exit to the back walkway that would have a straight path to the wide country road to their small house. Suddenly, a firm hand pushed her to the ground, causing her to knock her chin and bite her tongue. Cal landed on top of her. The 2 lesser bullies lifted them to their feet. Ox wheezed as he entered the alley. All in all, they had only gotten a few yards from where Cal first attacked, but Ox looked as if he had run a marathon. He keeled over, huffing and puffing. After he regained his composure, he walked up to Cal, looming over him. In the shadow of the brute, Cal stared back with contempt. "Don't hurt him!" Cal attempted to intercede. Ox wasn't buying. He plowed his fist into the little boy's gut. Cal let out a big oof, and tears welled in his eyes. The blow was followed by a slap to the face. Despite all the lard for padding, Ox's hand still had a hard thud against Cal's cheek. Amora yelled, "We're going to tell Eldrich!" Eldrich was their older brother. He was 11, the same age as Ox. He didn't go with them to their daily learnings. Their father was the town smith, and Eldrich apprenticed under him. He was young for an apprentice, but their father needed help, and a son didn't require apprentice fees. Ox snorted. "I ain't scared of him." He pulled the wooden sword away from Cal and jabbed Amora hard in the gut with it. As the 2 siblings began to despair, Ox threw Cal's sword out of the alley. He looked around for something more suitable for pummeling these 2. He prized a thick dowel rod laying in a pile of scrap wood from one of the tanner's broken racks. Lifting his new club up with sinister glee, he began to ponder which one to beat first. "Eeny, meeny, miny," he huffed as he pointed the club from one to the other. Mo! A smooth, stern voice came from behind him as he felt a sharp sting on his back. He let out a startled cry and turned about to see a figure just an inch shorter than himself, holding Cal's discarded sword. He was handsome for an 11-year-old, with brown hair and eyes as green as the forest. There stood Eldrich. He had just been walking home from the smithy when he heard the struggle. He surveyed the situation. He was angered as he looked upon his tearful little brother, but his eyes hardened into hate when he looked upon Amora, with a nasty bruise on her chin and blood coming from her mouth. "My turn," Eldrich said as he stepped towards Ox. Ox backed up quickly. "Get him," he said as he pointed at Eldrich. The two lesser bullies let Cal and Amora go and picked up some more wooden scraps for weapons. Eldrich had no training with swords, but his father had to smith a few now and again. They were a rare order in their town, but when they did come in and his father wasn't around, Eldrich played with them constantly. The other children only had their make-believe play with sticks, while Eldrich seemed the natural. Not fully understanding strategy, the two kids charged one at a time. Eldrich easily sidestepped each one and gave them a good smack on the small of their back. This was enough to send them off crying. Now, alone, Ox rushed in with a savage swing of his heavy dowel rod. Eldrich stepped back out of reach as the attack missed and followed up with a kick to the round bully's girth. Ox landed on his pockets. He stared through his pudgy cheeks up at Eldrich, who had the sword poised to give another blow. Ox winced, but the strike never came. He looked up to see the trio walking off, out of the alley and towards their home. "Why didn't you hit him?" Cal demanded with a disappointed whine. Eldrich had his arms wrapped around Amora's shoulders as she continued to cry. "I don't know. I just couldn't," he said. "Well, I could have," Cal stated indignantly as he contemplated turning around and following through with his remark. "We better get home to Ma. She'll wonder why we're late." As they rushed home, the sun was setting. Thank you for listening. I'm Bryce Newberger, and this has been the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to purchase the full book, then either look up New Books on the Google Play bookstore, NEU Books, or simply click the link in the description. The book is only $5, and I appreciate your support.